She bought a first-class seat. She followed every rule. She boarded quietly. So why was she forced to move to the back of the plane without explanation? What the airline crew didn't know was that the black woman they dismissed wasn't just a passenger. She was an undercover federal auditor, and she had just turned their entire flight into an investigation. This is not just a story about a seat. It's about what that seat represents: power, access, dignity. What happens when someone who is always overlooked finally has the power to document everything, silently? And what if her quiet resistance starts to change an entire industry? From whispered assumptions at the boarding gate to a national investigation that rocked the airline world. This is the real story of Nia Reynolds, the woman who refused to disappear quietly. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or told to move back, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more true stories that expose injustice, celebrate quiet power, and inspire change. Now, let's begin. The airport was a symphony of motion. Rolling suitcases hummed over polished tile. Loudspeaker announcements echoed from high ceilings, and the scent of roasted coffee mingled with the faint sting of jet fuel filtering in through automatic glass doors. Travelers of all types moved through the concourse, some chatting loudly on phones, others marching with military precision towards security checkpoints. But one figure stood still, not out of confusion, but out of quiet calculation. Nia Reynolds adjusted the strap of her leather satchel, took a calming breath, and stepped off the escalator into Terminal C of Atlanta International Airport. Her navy blue pantsuit fit impeccably, tailored to her frame with gentle structure and minimal flair. The low bun at the nape of her neck didn't waver when she walked. Her eyes scanned everything but never lingered too long on anyone. Years of field work had taught her how to blend in without disappearing. She moved like someone used to carrying weight you couldn't see. Nia was 34, black, composed, and unbothered. At least, that's what her exterior said. Internally, her thoughts were measured, layered. She had a job to do. She always did. And today, that job started with a simple domestic flight Coastal Skies Air. Flight 2271 to San Francisco. Scheduled departure, 11:05 a.m. Assigned seat 2A, first class. She wasn't flying for luxury. She was flying for oversight. As a senior investigator for the Office of Federal Civil Aviation Oversight, OFCAO, pronounced like OFCO, Nia was halfway through a 3-month sweep of major U.S. airlines, quietly auditing real-time passenger experiences. Her task today to verify whether recent complaints of racial profiling and seating discrimination had merit. She wasn't here to cause trouble. She was here to document it if it arrived on its own. From her jacket pocket, she withdrew a printed boarding pass, no special flag, no internal notation of her role. That was the point. If no one knew who she was, they'd show their true face. She reached the security checkpoint and stepped forward when called, shoes off, laptop and tray, no metal, no perfume, no flinch when TSA waved her through. Years ago, this part had been nerve-wracking. Not anymore. The TSA agent nodded, barely looking at her face. She thanked him, retrieved her belongings, and moved toward Gate C9. The gate area was half full already. A family with 2 restless toddlers sat cross-legged near the window. An older man dozed with a paperback laid open on his chest, and a group of 20-somethings in branded hoodies huddled over a game of cards. Nia settled into an open chair along the far wall and took a slow look around. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the corner of her ID badge tucked away inside a zippered pouch in her satchel. She wouldn't need to show it, not unless something went sideways, and she hoped it wouldn't. A gate agent appeared behind the counter, white woman, mid-50s, gray blonde hair pulled into a severe ponytail. Her name tag read Evelyn. She placed a stack of printed boarding lists onto the podium, adjusted the mic, then began pre-boarding announcements with clipped authority. Nia glanced at the time. Still 20 minutes until her boarding group. From across the room, she noticed Evelyn glance in her direction just once, then again. The second look lingered. Nia tilted her head slightly. Not enough to confront, just enough to catalog. She turned her attention to the large window beside her. Outside, a Coastal Skies aircraft gleamed beneath the rising Georgia sun, its polished wings reflecting a slice of cloudless sky. Her phone buzzed. Jordan Miles, already in coach, seat 18D. Watching the rear cabin. Nia copy. No anomalies yet. Gate agent noticed me. Could be nothing. Jordan, her colleague, was playing the role of a casual traveler in economy. Their job was to gather data from different ends of the aircraft. Neutral observation. Unless provoked. A few more passengers began lining up near the gate. First class was called. Nia stood. She walked toward the podium calmly, boarding pass in one hand, ID tucked away. When Evelyn saw her approach, her smile faltered. Not entirely, but enough for someone like Nia to see the micro-expression flicker across her face. Not suspicion. Something colder. "Good morning," Nia said evenly, offering her boarding pass. Evelyn replied, eyes narrowing as she took the ticket. She scanned it, then looked at Nia again. "Seat 2A," Evelyn asked. Tone dipped with doubt. Nia nodded. "Yes, ma'am. First class." A beat of silence. Evelyn's eyes darted from the screen to the ticket, then back to Nia. "I need to double-check something. Could you step aside for a moment?" Her tone was pleasant, her posture firm, and the message beneath her words was unmistakable. Nia moved aside. She said nothing. Her hands rested calmly on her satchel. But her heart, quietly, dropped half an inch. She'd hoped today would be clean. The line behind her continued moving. A man in a tailored blazer passed through with no questions asked. A woman in a red pantsuit, white, middle-aged, smiled at Evelyn and received a welcome aboard in return. No delay, no detour. Back at her side, Evelyn tapped the keyboard. "You booked this ticket yourself, I did. No upgrades or standby, no. Paid in full, days ago." Evelyn squinted at the screen. Nia said nothing more. The silence was strategic. The more the gate agent filled the air, the more she might reveal. "Okay," Evelyn said eventually, though her voice didn't match the word. "Looks like it's fine." Nia offered a tight nod and proceeded toward the jet bridge. Her body moved with the same quiet grace, but inside her chest. Something sharp was building. She wasn't upset because it was new. She was upset because it was so familiar. The air inside the jet bridge felt colder than the terminal, thick with recycled chill and a faint metallic scent. Nia stepped forward with measured calm, her heels clicking softly on the thin industrial carpet. Ahead, the flight attendant at the aircraft door gave a practiced smile. "Welcome aboard," the attendant said automatically, barely glancing up as she motioned Nia toward the first-class cabin. Nia walked through the threshold and turned left, as her ticket instructed. First class on this particular Coastal Skies aircraft was a 2-row cabin, 8 plush leather seats arranged in a gentle curve. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and new fabric. Her seat, 2A, was by the window clean, serene, exactly what she expected when she booked it. She stowed her bag overhead and sat down quietly. The seat was wide, reclinable, with a soft fleece blanket folded neatly beside a monogrammed pillow. A glass of sparkling water already rested in the cup holder. She took a breath and allowed herself to believe that maybe the incident at the gate had been a fluke, a glitch, not a pattern. But then, 5 minutes later, she saw Evelyn Shore walking briskly down the aisle. Trailing behind her was a second woman, tall, sharp-featured, wearing a Navy Coastal Skies uniform with a senior crew member badge clipped to her collar. Her name tag read Maya Chen. Her expression was unreadable. They stopped beside Nia's seat. "Miss Reynolds?" Evelyn asked, already checking her notes. Nia looked up, her tone composed. "Yes." Maya Chen leaned slightly forward. "I'm afraid there's been a change in the seating assignments. We're going to need you to move to a different seat." Nia blinked slowly. Not in confusion. She understood exactly what she was hearing, but in deliberate disbelief. She folded her hands gently in her lap. "I'm sorry. I don't understand. This is seat 2A. Correct, yes," Evelyn said, eyes darting from Nia's face to the tablet in her hands. "But it was double booked with another premium-level passenger. You'll need to move to an available seat in economy." A murmur of curiosity rose from a nearby seat. The woman across the aisle, in 2C, peeked over her magazine. Nia's voice remained soft. "My ticket was purchased 4 days ago, in full. No miles, no upgrades. There was no indication of overbooking at the gate." Maya stiffened. Evelyn glanced toward the front of the cabin, then sighed. "Look, it's just how it's sorted out. We'll find you a comfortable seat further back." Nia hesitated. Every instinct in her told her to stand her ground, but her training whispered otherwise. "Observe, document, don't escalate until you must." She forced a breath through her nose. "May I ask to see the documentation confirming the double booking?" Evelyn's expression tightened. "You can contact customer service after landing. Right now, we need this seat." Just then, a man stepped into the row, tall, Caucasian, designer jacket, glossy wristwatch, early 40s. His gaze bounced from Nia to Evelyn. "Is this seat ready yet?" he asked, voice low but annoyed. "Mr. Lott," Maya said quickly. "We'll have it cleared in just a moment. Graham Lott." Nia had seen his name on the printed manifest when she passed the counter. She had a photographic memory for detail. He was a Gold Elite flyer with Coastal Skies, and clearly used to moving through the world without friction. Nia stared at him for a moment, then calmly unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. She didn't speak. She didn't make a scene. But inside, something in her curled tightly. As she walked past Evelyn and Maya, she could feel their collective exhale relief that she hadn't fought back. But the fight had just begun. It would not happen in this cabin. It would happen later in reports, in hearings, in consequences. The long walk back to economy felt strangely theatrical, like a stage play where one actress gets demoted mid-scene. Eyes followed her, not hostile, just curious, confused, a few sympathetic, most indifferent. Seat 27B was in the middle of a crowded row toward the rear of the plane, wedged between a man wearing headphones and a teenager tapping away on her phone. There was no space for Nia's satchel in the overhead bin, so she had to tuck it under the seat in front of her. Her knees touched the seat back. She didn't sigh. She didn't frown. She pulled out her phone and opened her secure notes app. Flight 2271 ATL to SFO time, reassigned from 2A to 27B 10:44 a.m. gate. Agent Evelyn Shore, lead cabin crew, Maya Chen, replacement passenger Graham Lott, confirmed elite status. No explanation offered at boarding, no compensation. She paused, then added, possible pattern of perceived legitimacy based on race on class cues. Beside her, the man in the window seat adjusted his headphones and leaned toward the window, offering her no acknowledgement. The teenager on her right didn't notice her at all. Nia stared straight ahead and forced her shoulders to relax. The temptation to flash her OFCAO badge had been strong, but that wasn't how oversight worked. Not yet. She needed the full picture: how they spoke to her, how they treated others, what happened next. She needed the story to tell itself. The plane continued to board. The aisles buzzed with awkward conversations, clunky suitcases, and the smell of cologne and coffee. A crying baby started up somewhere in row 32. Someone asked a flight attendant for an extra ginger ale. Nia sat still and watched it all. 20 minutes later, the plane pushed back from the gate. As the engines roared to life, she closed her eyes briefly. She wasn't just documenting policy violations. She was collecting moments of truth. The hum of the aircraft grew steadier as the plane reached cruising altitude. Cabin lights dimmed slightly. Flight attendants clipped in for safety, then unbuckled with routine precision as the seatbelt sign blinked off overhead. The air inside the cabin settled into a quiet lull, broken only by rustling snack wrappers and the distant cries of a restless toddler. In seat 27B, Nia Reynolds sat still, her back straight, eyes forward, hands folded in her lap. She hadn't touched the in-flight magazine or the safety card. Instead, she stared at the tray table in front of her, eyes unfocused. Her mind wasn't on the cramped seat or the loss of legroom. It was on the moment her name had become a question mark instead of a confirmation. "Ma'am, please step aside." Those words echoed louder now that the cabin was quiet. It wasn't the first time she'd heard a variation of them. Not in her life, not in her career, but it never failed to leave a faint bruise, psychological, invisible, the kind that makes you wonder, even for a breath, if you did something wrong, if you stood too tall, spoke too clearly, dressed too sharply, existed too fully in a space someone else didn't expect you to occupy. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she felt the smallest vibration on her armrest. A text. Jordan, Miles, 11:14 a.m. Heard something up front. You okay, Nia Reynolds? 11:15 a.m. Fine. Moved to 27B. No explanation. Classic handoff. Jordan, 11:16 a.m. Same. Pattern boarding pass legit, but someone assumed you didn't belong. Nia, 11:16 a.m. Worse, they let him take the seat without hesitation. Lott. You'll see him at baggage claim. I'll brief fully after landing. She slipped her phone back into her jacket pocket and turned her focus to the aisle. A flight attendant moved past slowly, blonde, early 40s. Cheerful voice that dropped when speaking to passengers in the back. Nia watched as she offered snacks to the first 10 rows in economy, her smile tighter by the time she reached row 20. By the time she reached Nia, the smile was gone entirely. Peanuts or pretzels, the attendant asked flatly, already holding both out. Water, please. Nia said. The woman didn't respond. She dropped a bag of pretzels on Nia's tray and walked on. Nia looked down at the bag. She hadn't asked for pretzels. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't expected fanfare, just water, just acknowledgement, just human regard. She picked up the pretzel bag and set it aside. 2 rows ahead, she noticed a young Latino man trying to get the attendant's attention. His daughter, maybe 5, was pale and squirming in her seat. He spoke softly, asking for ginger ale or crackers. The flight attendant walked past without stopping. The man leaned into the aisle again, this time more firmly. "Excuse me. Please, can we get a drink? My daughter's stomach's upset." The attendant turned her head slightly but didn't stop. Only when a white woman across the aisle waved a manicured hand did the attendant finally return. She handed over ginger ale and a napkin addressed to the woman, not to the father. Nia's jaw tightened. The pattern was too familiar. Dismissive glances, diminished voices, deferred service, all subtle, all deniable, all systemic. She took out her notebook, the small brown leather one she kept for moments like these, and began writing. Not typing, not voice dictation. Handwritten notes had a weight that digital ones lacked. The ink was slow enough to make her reflect on every word. Flight attendant blonde. 40s dismissed passenger in row 25. Service delayed until second passenger white intervened. Passenger in row 27B myself denied water. Served incorrect item. No engagement. Flight crew tone noticeably warmer in front cabin. Nia tapped her pen against her leg once. Then again. Every line of data she gathered wasn't just for her. It was for every traveler who'd been told silently, "You don't look like you paid for this. You don't sound like someone who deserves comfort. You don't belong." 20 minutes passed before another flight attendant appeared, this one younger, with soft curls tucked under her hat and a badge that read Kendra. She approached Nia with a curious look, pausing longer than expected. "Ms. Reynolds," she asked quietly. Nia looked up. "Yes, I'm sorry. There was a mix-up with the seating chart. I just wanted to check if everything was okay now." Nia offered a neutral expression. "Define okay." Kendra blinked, caught off guard. "I mean, if your seat was changed properly, and if you were informed of the reason." I wasn't at the gate when it happened." Nia studied her. This wasn't a performance. There was discomfort in her voice, conflict behind her eyes. "There wasn't a reason given," Nia replied calmly. "No apology, no compensation, just a need for my seat." Kendra lowered her voice further. "I don't want to overstep, but you had 2A, right?" Nia nodded. Kendra glanced over her shoulder, then back. "There's been some talk among crew. I overheard Evelyn say something about the manifest being off because a name showed up that didn't match the passenger type expected for that section. It didn't sit right with me." Nia stayed silent. Let her talk. "I asked Maya if I could look into it, but she told me to stay in my lane. Said she'd handle it." Nia's voice, when it came, was steady, and did she Kendra's face flushed? I don't know. I think she wanted to avoid conflict. Nia offered a soft but unmistakable nod. "You did the right thing by checking in." Kendra hesitated, then placed a bottle of water on Nia's tray. "If you need anything else, let me know." Then she walked away. Nia picked up the bottle and opened it slowly. Her throat was dry, but not just from thirst, from restraint, from knowing that this wasn't about discomfort, it was about identity. She took a sip and watched the aisle again. Across from her, the little girl was asleep now, curled into her father's side. The woman with the manicured nails had pulled a scarf over her face and turned toward the window. Everything looked quiet, but Nia knew better. The story had just begun. Nia tapped her pen against the edge of the tray table. Once, twice. Then she stopped herself. She had already filled 3 full pages in her leather-bound notebook, not bullet points, full sentences, names, interactions, body language, inconsistencies, the kind of detail that wouldn't mean much on its own, but when placed side by side would form a picture, and that picture would either confirm what she'd suspected or expose something worse. She leaned back into the rigid seat. The foam had thinned from too many passengers before her. Her knees grazed the plastic of the tray table even when it was folded. It was humbling in a way being here, watching the undercurrent of a system she already knew was broken. But this time, she wasn't hearing it secondhand through formal complaints or summaries written in legal language. This time, she was living it in real time. 3 rows ahead, a teenage boy of South Asian descent pressed his call button for the second time in 10 minutes. Nia noticed it because she'd started timing interactions. She counted 84 seconds before a flight attendant responded, and when they did, they brought the wrong drink and didn't apologize. The boy hesitated, then took it anyway. He didn't complain. Most people didn't. But Nia saw him glance toward the front of the cabin with a flicker of longing, like he knew things worked differently up there. She made a note. To her right, the young girl who had gotten sick earlier had her head in her father's lap, sleeping now. Her father was watching the aisle with a haunted kind of attention, like he didn't trust what might happen next. Nia caught his eye for just a second and gave the smallest of nods. He returned it, almost grateful. Behind her, a woman in her 60s was complaining softly to her husband about the tray table being sticky. She waved at a passing attendant and asked for a wipe. The flight attendant nodded but didn't return. Another note, another pattern. Nia took a quiet breath. The cabin, viewed from here, was like a slow-moving machine of imbalance. It didn't shout its bias, it whispered it. Unequal treatment that was easy to dismiss if you weren't looking closely. But she was. That was her entire job. She pulled out her phone, opened the secure OFKO app, and began uploading her handwritten notes by dictation. The app converted speech to text in a private cloud log accessible only by her office and her partner Jordan. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Economy, cabin service disparity noted between passengers. Multiple delays in assistance based on race and perceived status. Flight crew tone altered noticeably depending on passenger appearance. She paused, then added something she hadn't said aloud yet. I've been reassigned from first class under questionable circumstances. Passenger Graham Lott replaced me in 2A with no challenge. I have yet to receive a formal explanation. Pattern matches previously reported cases. Her throat tightened as she finished the note. The truth wasn't new, but writing it, saying it aloud, still stung. She checked the time. They were just under 2 hours from San Francisco. Long enough for more observations, but too long to stay idle. She unfastened her seatbelt and stood. Her legs protested slightly from sitting so tightly. She stretched once, then made her way to the rear galley. 2 flight attendants stood near the coffee station, whispering with their backs turned. When they heard her footsteps, one of them glanced back. It was Kendra. "Hey," she said quickly, stepping away from the other woman. "Hi," Nia replied gently. "Sorry to interrupt. Just stretching my legs." "Of course," Kendra said, voice lower now. "I meant to check in again sooner. It's been tense. You don't have to explain," Nia said, watching her closely, "but I appreciate you being honest earlier." Kendra looked conflicted, glancing at the other attendant who had turned away to pour coffee. "I didn't want to get involved," she said. "But after what I heard Evelyn say before takeoff, it didn't feel right. And Maya," she hesitated. "She's been dismissive." Nia raised an eyebrow. Dismissive how Kendra chewed her bottom lip, like I should stay quiet, that I shouldn't question how seats are reassigned. But I've flown this route before. That kind of switch doesn't usually happen once the passenger's seated, especially not without documentation. Nia nodded slowly. "It doesn't. There are standard protocols." Kendra blinked. "You sound like you've read the manual." Nia gave a small smile. "Something like that." They stood in silence for a moment as the hum of the engines filled the galley. Then Nia spoke again, softer this time. "What did Evelyn say exactly?" Kendra looked around, then leaned slightly closer. She said something like, "That one can't really be in 2A, right? Probably a mileage glitch or a rewards redemption. I've seen it before." "That one," Nia repeated, her tone not rising, but cooling. Kendra nodded slowly, guilt in her eyes. It was quiet, but I heard it. "She meant you." "I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize for what someone else said," Nia said calmly. "But thank you for not pretending you didn't hear it." Kendra's shoulders dropped slightly. She looked relieved. Then she straightened again as Maya's voice called from down the aisle. "Kendra, I need help with tray clearings. Now." Kendra winced. "I should go." Nia nodded. "I'll be in my seat. If anything else comes up." "You know where I am?" As she returned to row 27, she noticed Maya watching her from the front of the cabin. Their eyes locked for a fraction of a second. Maya didn't smile. She turned away first. Nia sat down again and resumed writing. She had more than enough for a preliminary report, but she wasn't done yet, because she had a theory and she was going to test it. 15 minutes later, she pressed the call button. This time, Maya appeared. "Yes," she asked, clipped. "I'd like to speak to the lead flight attendant," Nia said. "Tone neutral." Maya's eyes narrowed. "That would be me." Nia didn't blink. "Then I'd like to ask why I was removed from seat 2A. Maya folded her arms. There was a manifest error. The seat was reassigned. To a later boarding passenger she didn't answer. "Was there documentation of the reassignment?" Nia asked. Maya straightened. "If you have a concern, you can contact the airline after landing." Nia met her eyes evenly. "I intend to." She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. Because the look in Maya's eyes shifted, just slightly, like she'd realized, too late, that Nia might not be just another coach passenger, that she might be someone watching, recording, remembering. Maya walked away without another word, and Nia opened her notebook again. The real audit had begun. It started with a bump, a soft tremor underfoot, almost like the plane had hit a patch of rough air or an invisible speed bump in the sky. Then another. The cabin lights flickered briefly as the aircraft jostled. Around her, passengers stirred, the intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a bit of turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts." Nia clicked her seat belt into place. The man beside her glanced up from his phone, mildly annoyed, then went back to his game. The teenager to her right looked anxious for the first time since boarding. She felt it too, not just the turbulence outside the aircraft, but the one brewing within it. After her brief confrontation with Maya in the aisle, the atmosphere had shifted. She could feel it in the way the flight attendants passed her row with slightly quicker steps, how they avoided making eye contact. Kendra hadn't come by again, though Nia suspected that wasn't by choice. A few minutes passed in uneasy quiet before the intercom chimed again. "This is your captain speaking. We'll be hitting some sustained chop for the next 30 minutes as we cross into high-altitude jet streams. Nothing to worry about, but we do ask all passengers to remain seated for now. Cabin service will resume when it's safe." Nia closed her eyes for a moment. 30 minutes of forced stillness wasn't the worst thing. It gave her time to think, to breathe, to feel, because beneath her cool exterior, she wasn't numb, she wasn't invincible. She felt the same ache that any human would feel when singled out and dismissed for no legitimate reason. The same sting of watching someone take what you'd rightfully secured, while you're expected to smile and let it go. She wasn't angry in a loud way, but the quiet pain had its own volume. She let her thoughts drift, briefly, to past cases. The young black man removed from a flight for wearing sagging jeans. The Indian mother told her stroller was too large, while a white mother had passed with one just as wide. The Latina couple denied first-class upgrades despite having the highest loyalty tier, complaint after complaint. Dismissed as isolated by the airlines, but they weren't isolated. They were consistent, and today's flight was another line in a long ledger of proof. The turbulence eased slightly, though the seatbelt sign remained lit. Then came a different kind of ripple this time through the voices of the passengers. A murmur started in the front of the cabin, not loud, but urgent. Nia's ears sharpened. She heard someone say, "She's not looking good," then louder, "Hey, can we get some help here?" She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. No flight attendant was moving yet. She stood carefully and began walking forward. As she reached the first-class divider, she saw a woman slumped sideways in seat 2C. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her breathing looked shallow. A man beside her, late 40s, wearing a cardigan, was patting her cheek gently. Panicked. "She said she didn't feel right after the meal," he said, voice cracking. "She has a severe nut allergy." She asked 3 times about the ingredients. They said it was clear. Nia's heart clenched. She recognized the signs, the way the woman's lips were swelling, the fluttering pulse in her neck. Anaphylaxis. "Does she have an EpiPen?" Nia asked quickly. The man shook his head. "It's in the checked luggage. They said it would be fine." I believed them. "Did anyone call for medical assistance?" "I hit the call button 5 minutes ago." No one came. Behind them, someone finally moved. Kendra rushed forward, her face pale. She knelt by the woman's side, checking for a pulse. Her eyes darted around, unfocused. "We need epinephrine," Nia said, "and a doctor." Now, Kendra fumbled for the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a medical professional on board, please alert a crew member immediately. We have a passenger in need of urgent assistance." People began turning in their seats. The flight attendant from the back, the one who'd ignored Nia earlier, now jogged toward the front, holding a slim black medical kit. Kendra grabbed it from her, hands trembling, and looked at Nia as if asking permission. "Do you know how to administer it?" Nia asked. Kendra nodded. Barely. The older flight attendant backed away. Her face was unreadable. She didn't offer help. She just stood by the galley curtain. From coach, a passenger stood up and called out. "I'm an ER nurse. Get up here," Nia said without turning. "Quickly." The nurse came forward, her backpack swinging behind her. She moved past the curtain, took one look at the woman's face, and said, "She's crashing. I need that EpiPen now." Within seconds, she had drawn the pen and pressed it into the woman's thigh. The cabin watched, frozen. Nia could feel the tension like pressure on her skin. The nurse counted under her breath. 1,000, 1,000. The woman stirred, barely. Her breathing was still strained, but her fingers twitched. "She's responding," the nurse said, breathless. "But we need EMTs on the ground the moment we land. She needs oxygen and follow-up care." Nia looked toward the cockpit. No word yet from the pilot. She glanced at Kendra, whose eyes were glassy. "You did good," Nia said quietly, but Kendra shook her head. "We told her it was safe. She asked twice. I know." The cardigan man was now sitting in the aisle, rocking slightly, tears in his eyes. He looked up at Nia. "She told me to double-check," he whispered. "I didn't. I believed them." Nia placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "She's alive. That's what matters right now." The nurse looked up from her crouch. "We need to keep her upright. Can you help me move her together?" They shifted the woman's body, propping her up gently against the sidewall and elevating her legs. The nurse monitored her pulse. Nia heard footsteps behind her. It was Maya. Her voice was thin. "We've notified the captain. We're coordinating with ground medics in San Francisco." Nia turned toward her slowly. "Was it you who confirmed the ingredients?" Maya flinched. I asked the galley staff. They said the meal was allergen-free, and you didn't double-check, I know." She said softly, "I didn't." The cardigan man turned toward her. His voice cracked. "You could have killed her." Maya didn't respond. She stepped backward and disappeared into the galley. Nia didn't follow. There would be time for accountability later. Right now, they had to keep the woman stable. Minutes passed like hours. The nurse stayed beside her, vigilant. Kendra retrieved a portable oxygen canister from the overhead and attached the mask. The woman's color began to return slowly. Her breathing was ragged, but steady. When the turbulence finally stopped, the flight resumed its path in smooth silence. But the emotional shake hadn't passed. Not for Nia, not for the crew, not for anyone who had just witnessed what happened when negligence met bias and collided with a body too fragile to absorb it. And Nia knew with certainty now. This wasn't just an audit anymore. It was a reckoning. The cabin lights brightened slightly, a soft, artificial glow that cut through the tension like sunlight after a storm. But the air hadn't cleared. Not really. Not emotionally. The woman in 2C was conscious now, her breathing still shallow but steady. Her husband knelt beside her, holding her hand like a lifeline. The nurse remained crouched on the floor, adjusting the oxygen mask gently, checking her pulse every few minutes. She hadn't even taken off her backpack. The rest of the cabin had mostly gone silent. People whispered. A few had tried to go back to reading or watching in-flight entertainment, but most were still shaken. A medical emergency midair reminded everyone just how fragile the illusion of safety could be. Nia stood beside the curtain that separated first class from economy. Her eyes moved across the cabin, watching the crew. Maya was nowhere to be seen. Kendra lingered in the front galley, speaking quietly with another attendant. Nia could only catch a few words, but they were enough. She asked. Twice. They said it was okay. What if she hadn't had that nurse? Nia turned toward the man sitting in 2A, her original seat, Graham Lott. He'd watched the entire emergency unfold from barely a foot away, yet hadn't moved once. He'd made no effort to assist, didn't offer water, didn't press a call button. Just sat back with his arms crossed and a bored look on his face like the situation was an inconvenience to his comfort. Now he was scrolling through something on his phone. News, probably, or sports scores. His thumb moved with indifference. Nia approached him, not with confrontation but with quiet presence. "Did you notice she was in distress before they called for help?" she asked, her voice low. Graham looked up, surprised she had addressed him. "I figured someone would handle it," he replied. "She asked about the food's ingredients twice." Graham shrugged. "That's not really my concern." Nia studied him for a moment. His watch gleamed. His shoes were polished. Every part of his appearance screamed high-status traveler, and not one part of him had engaged when a woman was gasping for air a foot away. Privilege, Nia thought, is the ability to opt out of urgency. She turned and walked away without another word. She returned to her seat in row 27 just as the captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Hart. I'd like to inform you that medical personnel will be meeting us upon landing in San Francisco. Please remain seated until the aircraft comes to a full stop. We thank the medical professionals on board for their assistance today." A smattering of polite applause followed. It was shallow, perfunctory, not disrespectful, but not heartfelt either. The moment had rattled people, but only a few understood how close it had come to being tragic. The seatbelt sign dinged back on. As Nia buckled in, her phone buzzed with a message. "Jordan Miles, 1:36 p.m. heard about the emergency. You involved Nia Reynolds, 1:37 p.m. Yes, woman in 2C, severe allergic reaction. Confirmed she asked twice about ingredients, told it was safe. Galley crew ignored protocol. ER nurse on board saved her. Jordan, 1:38 p.m. Damn. Anything else? Nia, 1:38 p.m. Plenty. Kendra is cracking. Maya disappeared during crisis. Passenger in 2A didn't lift a finger. Starting to feel like more than coincidence." She stared at the screen, then typed one more thing. "Nia, 1:40 p.m. I'm going to talk to the captain." She stood again and made her way forward, past silent rows of uneasy passengers. Captain Hart was standing just outside the cockpit door, speaking in hushed tones with a uniformed crew member. He turned as she approached, his brows furrowed in a way that told her he knew exactly who she was, even if not by title. "Miss Reynolds, is it?" "Yes," she said quietly. "May I have a word, Captain?" He stepped slightly to the side, offering her a more private space near the forward galley. "I'm aware of the medical situation," he said before she could speak. "We're coordinating with EMS on the ground. I want to make sure you're okay as well. I understand you assisted." "I did," she said. "I also observed that your crew member failed to act quickly. The passenger asked about the food ingredients multiple times. She was assured it was safe." Captain Hart exhaled through his nose. "I was just briefed. We'll be filing a full incident report." "She might have died," Nia said softly. He looked at her then. Really looked. There was something in his expression, professionalism, yes, but also a flicker of uncertainty, like he was trying to read between the lines. "I'd like to know if the passenger's dietary information was properly logged," she said, "and whether Maya Chen was the one who confirmed the meal as safe." The captain straightened slightly. "Are you involved in an official capacity?" Nia didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Let's just say I'm not your average passenger." Hart's posture shifted, more alert now. "I see. I'll be following up." She added, "This isn't an isolated oversight. And you should know this flight's had multiple procedural irregularities." He paused. "Is there something I should be aware of?" "I was removed from my original seat," she said. 2A. No documentation, no explanation. It was handed to Mr. Lott, who boarded after I did." Hart nodded once. Slow. "That wasn't brought to my attention." "It will be," Nia said, "soon." He glanced toward the front of the plane where Maya had just emerged from the cockpit, straightening her jacket. She caught their eyes and stiffened. "I'll look into it personally," Hart said. Nia gave him a polite nod and returned to her seat. As she sat, Kendra approached from the aisle. Her face was pale, and her lips pressed into a tight line. "Can I speak to you privately?" she asked. Nia tilted her head toward the empty seat beside her. Kendra sat and glanced around before speaking. "I just wanted to say thank you for helping her and for not screaming at us. If it had been me, I think I would have." Nia looked at her, expression softening. "That's not how I get results." Kendra hesitated. "I think I messed up earlier. About your seat. You weren't the one who made the decision. I know, but I didn't question it. I assumed something else was going on. I let Maya and Devlin take the lead, and I just followed orders." Nia said nothing. She let the silence stretch. "I want to do better," Kendra whispered, "but I'm scared. This isn't the first time I've seen something like this happen, and people just look away." Nia's voice was gentle, but firm. Looking away doesn't protect you. It makes you part of the pattern. Kendra swallowed. "I don't want to be." Nia nodded slowly, then, "Don't be." They sat quietly for a moment as the landing gear lowered and the engines shifted pitch. Outside the window, San Francisco's coastline stretched into view. Glittering blue water, silver buildings. A city known for justice, but not immune to prejudice. As the plane began its descent, Nia looked forward again toward the curtain, the cockpit, the system she was about to hold accountable. The woman in 2C was still breathing. Barely, but she was breathing. And Nia. She was just getting started. The plane touched down with a rumble, its wheels kissing the tarmac with that brief, familiar shudder that made every heart in the cabin lift for just a beat before relaxing. Passengers clutched armrests. Some whispered thank yous. Others clapped softly as if relief needed a sound. But for Nia Reynolds, relief hadn't come yet. Her hands rested on her lap, motionless, as the plane taxied toward the gate. Out the window, she saw 2 emergency medical vehicles already parked beside the terminal. Their flashing lights glinted against the fuselage as ground crew positioned stairs and ramps for a rapid medical response. In 2C, the woman who had gone into anaphylaxis was stable now, oxygen still pressed against her face. Color beginning to return to her cheeks, her husband hadn't let go of her hand once. The ER nurse remained seated across the aisle, still alert, still present, and everyone else. Most were quiet, avoiding eye contact, processing. The seatbelt sign blinked off, but no one moved. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Emergency medical personnel will be boarding momentarily to assist a passenger in first class. We ask for your patience and cooperation." Flight attendants stood in place, except Maya Chen. She lingered near the cockpit, arms crossed tightly, her face turned partially away from the cabin. Nia could see the tension in her shoulders even from a distance. A soft tap on Nia's arm made her turn. Kendra had returned. "Can you come to the galley?" she asked quietly. "Please." Nia looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. She rose slowly, gathering her satchel, and followed Kendra to the front of the plane. The small galley behind the first-class curtain had become a sort of holding area, away from the passenger's view. The metal counters were cluttered with water bottles, unused glasses, napkins, and a half-finished inventory checklist. Maya was there too. She didn't look up at first, but when she did, her eyes met Nia's, and in them was something hard to define. Not fear, not guilt, just calculation. Kendra shifted awkwardly. I thought we should all talk." Maya finally spoke, about what Nia didn't answer right away. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a narrow leather wallet. From it, she withdrew a badge. She didn't flash it, didn't wave it. She simply laid it on the counter. Face up. Office of Federal Civil Aviation Oversight Senior Investigator, Nia Reynolds. Maya's breath hitched. Kendra took a half step back. The metal galley seemed to tighten around them. Maya began, but her voice cracked. Nia nodded slowly. "Yes." Kendra's eyes widened. "That's why you kept writing. Why you knew policy." "I'm here on an unannounced compliance audit," Nia said softly. "And everything that's happened from the seating reassignment to the medical emergency has been documented thoroughly." Maya swallowed hard. This wasn't personal. "It never is," Nia said. "That's what makes it systemic." She let the silence settle. Let the weight of her presence be felt. "I didn't. The gate agent," Maya started. "I know what the gate agent said," Nia interrupted. "Kendra told me." Kendra looked down. "I didn't want to lie anymore," she whispered. "I didn't know who you were, but I knew what happened wasn't right." Nia nodded gently, "And you did the right thing by saying so." Maya exhaled sharply. "So, what happens now?" "You report us. We lose our jobs. I don't determine the consequences," Nia replied, "but I collect the truth, and I ask questions." She turned slightly toward Maya. "Why didn't you take the woman's allergy seriously?" "I was told the meal was safe," Maya said defensively. "By whom?" "The ground catering crew." "Did you verify the manifest?" Her allergy notes. Maya looked away. "I should have." Nia nodded slowly. "Yes, you should have." A knock on the cockpit door interrupted the tension. Captain Hart emerged, his expression grave. His eyes flicked to Nia's badge on the counter, then back to her face. He didn't look surprised. "I thought so," he said quietly. "Then you understand what this means," Nia replied. He nodded once. "We've got EMTs boarding now. They'll remove the passenger through the front. After that, I suggest we disembark as usual." Nia nodded. "Understood." He glanced at Maya, then at Kendra. "You two stay behind for a brief debriefing after landing procedures are complete." "Yes, sir," Kendra said immediately. Maya hesitated, then gave a tight nod. Nia returned to her seat. As EMTs entered the cabin, carrying a collapsible stretcher and a medical bag, passengers parted like water. No one spoke. Some reached out to touch the woman's hand. Her husband gave small, grateful nods to each of them. When they reached the jet bridge, the nurse helped steady her as they lifted her gently from the seat. The silence that followed was heavier than applause. 20 minutes later, passengers began disembarking. Nia waited. Jordan had texted that he'd meet her by baggage claim. She was in no rush. As she stood to leave, Graham Lott remained seated, scrolling his phone. He didn't look up. He didn't apologize. She didn't expect him to. She stepped off the plane, walked through the jet bridge, and into the terminal. The air felt different, cooler, open. At the edge of the waiting area, Jordan stood against a pillar, arms folded, backpack slung across one shoulder. "You good?" he asked. "I'm good," she replied. They walked together toward baggage claim. "Full report?" he asked. Nia nodded. "Full, clear violations, multiple witnesses, crew testimony coming. You break cover." She nodded again. "Had to." Maya tried to shift blame. "And now we give the airline a chance to respond," she said. "And if they don't," Jordan smiled, "we escalate." Nia let out a slow breath. "They're not going to like what comes next." "No," Jordan said, "but maybe they'll finally listen." They walked in silence for a moment, the rolling sound of suitcase wheels around them blending into the background. Nia pulled out her phone and opened her OFKO app. At the top of the screen, a new entry was waiting. Case Naher CS 2271, Coastal Skies Audit Active. She tapped Confirm, then slid the phone back into her bag. The real turbulence, she knew, was just beginning. The gate agent was still typing when Nia approached the counter. Passengers had long disembarked. The crew had dispersed. EMTs had wheeled the allergic passenger through an alternate corridor toward ground transport. But Nia stayed behind, not because she needed to, but because she had to finish what was left unresolved. "Can I help you?" the agent asked, eyes flicking upward, lips tight. Her badge wasn't visible, and Nia had no intention of flashing it yet. "I'm trying to retrieve a receipt," Nia said, "for a first-class ticket I paid for, but never sat in." The woman hesitated. "Name Nia Reynolds." Click, click, scroll. Her eyes moved back and forth across the screen. "You were in seat 27C. "Correct. That's where I ended up. I was reassigned from seat 2A. The agent frowned. "I see the original ticket." "Yes, but it looks like it was changed." "I didn't authorize the change," Nia said. "I wasn't notified. There's no note here." "Is there?" The woman's fingers froze on the keyboard. One moment. She clicked something, then paused. Then slowly reached for a supervisor call button. "I need to escalate this," she said, not making eye contact anymore. Within 2 minutes, a uniformed supervisor appeared, a tall man with gray streaks at his temples and a clipboard in hand. He smiled politely, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "I understand there was a seat reassignment issue," he said smoothly. "There was a lot more than that," Nia replied evenly. "But yes, I paid for seat 2A. I boarded first. I sat down. I was then removed without explanation and relocated to economy, while a white male passenger was seated in 2A minutes later." The supervisor's smile faltered. "Do you have a record of who authorized the switch?" she asked. He shuffled his clipboard. "Our policy allows for last-minute upgrades due to maintenance concerns or balancing passenger status." "Was there a maintenance issue with 2A?" she asked directly. He hesitated. "Not that I'm aware of." "Was Mr. Graham Lott on the upgrade list?" Another pause. No, the man admitted. He was ticketed in economy, but his loyalty status may have played a role in discretionary reassignment. And my loyalty status, she asked. He glanced at her screen. Also, platinum tier, he said quietly. And who made the call to remove me, gate agent Evelyn Shore? But we'd have to verify the timing and context. I already did. Nia replied. She reached into her satchel and slid a folded page across the counter. It was a printed screenshot of the cabin manifest at the time of boarding. Highlighted in yellow was her name beside 2A. Another line, time-stamped 4 minutes later, showed the switch. The supervisor took the page, his mouth pressed into a firm line. "I'll have to forward this to corporate," he said. "You won't have to go far," Nia said, pulling out her badge and laying it on the counter with the same quiet finality she'd used in the galley earlier. The agent behind the desk paled. The supervisor's posture changed entirely. "I've already filed a case report through off-KAO channels. This encounter will be attached. I recommend Coastal Skies Air begin compiling internal documentation now, because when the audit goes public, you'll need a paper trail that shows you acted in good faith once notified." She paused. "That starts with accountability." The supervisor cleared his throat. "Understood. I'd also like a record of every passenger removed, reassigned, or downgraded in the last 6 months due to non-technical reasons. Sorted by race and loyalty tier. I'll put in the request," he murmured. "Good." With that, she took her badge back, tucked it into her wallet, and turned away from the counter. She didn't need anything else from them, not right now. But as she walked away from the gate, a lump formed in her throat because none of this had to happen. She could still see her own hand on the armrest of seat 2A, the cool leather, the moment her comfort, her dignity had been interrupted. She didn't cry then, not even now, but there was a cost, and it was cumulative. Jordan was waiting by the glass doors that led to baggage claim, sipping from a vending machine coffee and tapping into his tablet. "They looped you in already?" Nia asked. "Yep." "They're rattled. Coastal Skies compliance team just pinged our portal with a request for clarification." She smirked. "Translation, they're nervous. You shook the hornet's nest. Now they're trying to figure out if the queen's awake." They started walking again, the terminal quieter now that most passengers had filtered out. "You okay?" Jordan asked. Nia hesitated. "I'm fine." He looked at her. That didn't sound like fine. "I'm tired," she admitted. "Not physically, but existentially tired." Jordan didn't say anything for a moment. Then he nodded. "Because it keeps happening, because it's expected to happen, and people still act surprised when it does." They passed a flight status monitor, its screen filled with delays, gate changes, and destinations. One of the rows blinked red. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like?" Nia said softly. "To just board a flight and not be tested all the time," Jordan said. "But I also wonder who'd fight back if we didn't." They stopped at the escalator. Jordan let the silence hang. "I requested an internal review of Evelyn Shore," he said. "She's had 3 other passenger complaints, all women of color. 2 of them downgraded last minute. Pattern," Nia said. "Not coincidence. We'll get her. We'll get more than her." Nia replied. "This case, it's not just about one seat, one flight. It's about all the people watching and not stepping in, and all the people who don't get badges," she said, "but still get humiliated." They walked toward the exit. Outside, the fog of San Francisco drifted low across the roads. the city's breath thick and gray. A car waited for them at the curb, a Federal Fleet vehicle. Jordan opened the door for her, then slid into the passenger side. As the engine hummed to life, Nia leaned her head back. "I'm reclaiming 2A," she said quietly. Jordan glanced at her. "How do you mean symbolically, legally?" "Whatever way it matters," she said, "because they didn't just take my seat, they tried to take your presence, and I'm still here." The car pulled away from the curb. Behind them, the airport terminal faded into the mist. 3 days later, Nia Reynolds walked into the headquarters of the Office of Federal Civil Aviation Oversight with a coffee in one hand and an envelope in the other. The air inside the building was cooler than she remembered. Clean, bright, sterile in a way that almost tried to soothe you into silence. But Nia wasn't here to be soothed. She was here to finish what had been set in motion somewhere over Colorado, on a flight where a black woman's dignity had been bartered for someone else's comfort. Her comfort, her seat, her identity. The receptionist gave a quiet nod as Nia walked through the main lobby, badge now clearly visible on her belt. The elevator chimed as she stepped in. The doors sealing behind her. 7th floor, regulatory enforcement. When she stepped out, she saw Jordan already pacing with a tablet in hand, his brow furrowed and his jaw tight. "They pulled the internal comms," he said without even greeting her. "What did they find?" she asked, handing him the envelope. "Everything," Jordan replied, "and I mean everything." He tapped his tablet and turned the screen toward her. A transcript of flight crew communications scrolled across the screen. 1:22 p.m. Cabin interphone record, Maya Chen to Evelyn Shore. "She's already in the seat. Evelyn, just switch her. She won't make a scene. Maya." What if she asks why Evelyn tell her catering error? Or loyalty conflict? Whatever. Just get her out. The other guy's dad is on the board. Nia stared at the lines for a long time. She read them again. Slower. Just switch her. She won't make a scene. They didn't even mention her name. She wasn't a person to them. Nia said softly, "Just an assumption." Jordan nodded, his tone quieter now. "They thought you'd just let it happen. Smile through it. Be quiet. But I didn't," Nia said. "No, you didn't." They walked together down the hall toward the review conference room. The walls were lined with framed photos of flight crews, inspectors, vintage aviation gear, all symbols of progress, all under scrutiny now. Inside the room, the director of regulatory enforcement, Camille Darrow, was already seated. She was composed, sharp in a slate gray suit, with her silver hair pinned back and reading glasses resting low on her nose. Beside her sat 2 members of the Compliance Council and a legal advisor. When Nia entered, Camille looked up and nodded. "Reynolds, have a seat." Nia took her place, unfolding the envelope in front of her. It contained printed logs, photos of the flight manifest, the incident report, and her own handwritten field notes. Jordan remained standing behind her, tablet still in hand. Camille began, her voice calm but clipped. "We've reviewed your report. We've confirmed the seat reassignment was not only undocumented, but deliberately manipulated. The cabin intercom logs are damning. The passenger's allergy incident compounded the matter and further exposed crew negligence." She looked at Nia over the rims of her glasses. "You were removed to make room for a board member's son." Nia said nothing at first. She didn't need to. Camille continued, We've already suspended gate agent Evelyn Shore pending final inquiry. Maya Chen has retained legal counsel. She's denying knowledge of the reassignment motive, but the comms transcript contradicts that," Jordan added. "We also received a statement from Kendra Voss. She corroborated Nia's account and provided a written affidavit. Brave of her," Camille noted. "She shouldn't have had to be brave," Nia said. "She should have had backup. Accountability should have been policy, not courage." Camille gave a subtle nod. "I agree." The conversation moved on to the logistics, potential sanctions, proposed reforms, policy updates. Jordan outlined a new in-flight audit protocol, one that would include anonymous reporting systems for crew and passengers alike. But Nia's focus never left the core issue. They hadn't just stolen her seat. They had measured her silence before she even had the chance to speak. An hour later, after the meeting had concluded and Camille had thanked her for the diligence and grace she displayed, Nia returned to her office overlooking the Federal Plaza. She sat at her desk, staring out the window at the steady rhythm of city life, cars moving, people walking, lives unfolding. Her phone buzzed, an email, subject formal apology from Coastal Skies Air. She clicked it open. "Dear Ms. Reynolds, we write to offer our sincerest apologies regarding your experience aboard Flight CS-2271. Our team deeply regrets the reassignment of your seat and the subsequent mishandling of passenger safety. This does not reflect our values as a company. We have initiated an internal review and placed all relevant personnel on temporary leave while further investigation continues. We respectfully request the opportunity to speak with you further and to make amends. Sincerely, Brandon Lasker, VP of Passenger Experience, Coastal Skies." Air Nia read it once, then again, then deleted it. Because apologies don't rewrite records. They don't remove the fear in someone's voice when they're being erased in real time. They don't undo assumptions like she won't make a scene. What mattered more was what came next. She opened a new file. Subject: proposed federal guidelines for equity-based boarding oversight, and she began to write. Later that evening, Jordan called from his car. "You see the news, no?" she said, though she'd sensed it was coming. "Breaking story. Coastal Skies passenger downgraded without cause. Leaked audio. Civil rights groups are responding. Hashtags already trending. Reclaim." Nia blinked, stunned. "Who leaked it?" "I didn't," Jordan said, "but someone inside must have." Nia smiled faintly. "Let the record speak for itself." On the other end, Jordan paused. "You okay? I will be." She hung up and turned back to her laptop, now drafting a new framework requiring every reassignment decision be logged, reviewed, and made accessible for post-flight accountability. Her phone buzzed again, a notification. Coastal Skies stock had dipped 3.8% in the last 2 hours. It wasn't about the money, but it did mean people were paying attention. For the first time in days, Nia allowed herself to exhale without restraint, because the real power wasn't in retaliation, it was in documentation. And when the story was told truthfully by evidence, not ego, it could no longer be ignored. By Monday morning, the world had caught up to what happened at Seat 2A. Nia woke to headlines flashing across major news networks. Her name wasn't in them, not yet, but the story was unmistakably hers. Airline downgrades black passenger to economy to seat VIP's son in first class. Leaked audio, she won't make a scene. Now she's making a federal case, chaque reclaim hate trends nationwide. A seat, a statement. Clips of commentators discussing the audio logs rotated across TV screens. Footage from airport terminals ran in the background. Civil rights attorneys, airline policy experts, activists who had been waiting for a case like this, and still, Nia hadn't spoken publicly. She made her oatmeal like she always did, stirred it slowly, let the almond milk soak through. She didn't like starting her day with caffeine. Her nerves already ran hot enough. By 9:00 a.m., her inbox held 214 new emails, a mix of internal memos, press inquiries, requests for interviews, legal confirmations, statements of support. Some strangers even offered to start a fund in her name. She replied to none of them. Instead, she opened the draft proposal she'd started the night before. Federal Boarding Equity Compliance Framework. Draft. She read over the words carefully. It had to be more than policy. It had to carry the human cost. Her phone buzzed. "Jordan, you watching the hearing today?" he asked. Nia paused. "They moved that fast," Congressional Subcommittee called it, in response to the leaked recording. "It's not about coastal skies alone. It's about systemic bias in commercial aviation. And they want me to testify not yet, but they've requested your report. Camille's forwarding it now." Nia took a long breath. "So I've gone from anonymous to blueprint." "Pretty much," Jordan said, and quietly, "They're impressed. You built a whole case while sitting in economy." "I wasn't sitting," Nia said. "I was observing." Later that afternoon, she sat alone in the corner of the off-KO media room, watching the hearing on a mounted screen. The room was empty, but her mind was crowded. Congresswoman Elaine Briggs, a former public defender, opened the session. Her voice was firm, controlled. "What does it say about our systems?" Briggs asked the panel. "When a woman can purchase a first-class ticket, sit in her assigned seat, and still be considered expendable?" Nia didn't blink. The airline rep shifted uncomfortably on screen. He gave corporate answers, regretful, vague. He called the incident unfortunate, said the seat change was operational, refused to address the audio recording directly. Briggs cut him off. "We've heard the tape. So have millions of Americans. You didn't move a passenger. You removed her, and you counted on her silence." Nia sat back. The words weren't hers, but they carried her weight. Later, one of the panelists, a former flight attendant named Serena Ives, spoke with raw honesty. "I've seen this before," Serena said. "When policies aren't clear, bias becomes the policy. It's subtle. It's the raised eyebrow, the rebooked upgrade, the reassigned seat, the woman who suddenly doesn't belong where she paid to be." Nia's chest tightened. It wasn't just her story anymore. It was hundreds, thousands, stories that had slipped through unrecorded because no one had a badge, or a platform, or the will to fight through layers of apology and indifference. She turned off the monitor and sat in silence. Then she opened her laptop and began drafting her own statement, not for media, not for the Hill, but for the internal agency archive, a record that would outlive her. Statement from investigator Nia Reynolds. "I did not board that flight expecting confrontation. I did not flash my badge. I did not demand privilege. I boarded as a black woman in navy blue professional, prepared and peaceful. But my presence was read as optional, disposable, my seat paid for, assigned was taken without cause, because someone assumed I wouldn't object, because someone assumed no one would care. This was not about a seat. It was about a pattern, and patterns, left unchallenged, become policy. I chose to respond not with anger, but with evidence, not with noise, but with record, because when silence is expected, truth becomes revolutionary. I reclaimed 2A not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong quietly, firmly, and without apology. She signed it, dated it, filed it into the federal case database, and exhaled. That evening, as she walked home from the office, she passed a newsstand downtown. A headline caught her eye. She didn't shout. She documented. Now the industry is scrambling. Below it, a photo, the Coastal Skies aircraft, tail number visible, blurred passengers in the background, and on the seat map, one square shaded in bold blue, 2A, symbolic now, a place of removal turned into a point of return. As she walked, a woman on the sidewalk slowed beside her. She looked about 50, wearing scrubs and sneakers, holding a grocery bag in one arm. "You her?" the woman asked, with a quiet smile. "The one from the plane." Nia hesitated, then nodded. The woman didn't ask for a photo, didn't gush. She just reached out and touched Nia's elbow. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not letting it slide." Nia smiled back. "Thank you for seeing it." They didn't say more, because some stories are already understood in silence. The room was colder than expected. Frosted glass walls, soft fluorescent light, a carafe of untouched water on a side table. 2 flags stood behind the long conference desk, one for the United States, one for the Office of Federal Civil Aviation Oversight. Nia Reynolds sat at the center of the panel table, her notepad open, a single pen resting neatly atop the page, no nameplate, no badge visible, just presence, across from her. Gregory Vale, the chief executive officer of Coastal Skies, sat with his legal team. He was calm, polished, silver-haired, tailored suit, the kind of man who had spent decades walking into rooms with confidence and leaving them with control. But this room was different. This room wasn't built for applause. It was built for testimony. Beside Nia, Camille Darrow and 2 additional federal investigators remained silent as the review began. A court recorder sat in the corner, capturing every word. Camille spoke first. "We're here to discuss the events aboard Flight CS-2271. Mr. Vale, thank you for appearing voluntarily." "My pleasure," he said smoothly. Nia didn't look at him immediately. She flipped her notepad open to the tabbed section marked Audio Transcript. Then she raised her eyes. "When did you first learn that your employee referred to a passenger as someone who won't make a scene?" Gregory hesitated. "I was informed the day the audio was leaked to the press," he replied. "It was disturbing." Nia nodded once. "And what action did you take following that knowledge?" "We initiated an internal investigation, suspended both the gate agent and the lead flight attendant, issued a formal apology." "To the public," Nia said, voice calm. "Not to me." Gregory tilted his head slightly. "You received our official communication through our VP of Passenger Experience. I deleted it." She replied simply. The room went still. "Not because I was angry," Nia continued, "but because it wasn't addressed to me as a person. It was addressed to a headline, a public relations crisis." Gregory's jaw tightened. Camille leaned forward. "Mr. Vale, can you confirm the following, that a loyalty upgrade request was logged for a Mr. Graham Lott, a platinum flyer and the son of a Coastal Skies board member, 1 hour before the flight?" "Yes." and that the reassignment of Ms. Reynolds's seat was made after that request, despite her having a paid first-class ticket. Yes, Gregory said again, this time slower. Do you believe that decision was racially motivated? Gregory hesitated. I believe it was based on poor internal discretion. Nia tapped her pen lightly against the page. You don't have to say the word, she said quietly. But I will. I was removed because I didn't look like the person you expected to occupy seat 2A. Gregory's eyes flicked to his lawyer, who gave a subtle nod. You have our full cooperation, Gregory said, and I'd like to make amends personally. Nia paused, then leaned slightly forward, her voice never rising. Mr. Vale, do you know how many people have told me that he opened his mouth? But she continued. Gate agents, crew leads, executives, all after the fact, after the seat is taken, after the voice is raised, after the camera is turned on. What I want to know is what are you doing before it happens? Gregory looked away for a moment. Then he spoke. We've begun restructuring our escalation policy. All seat reassignments must now be documented and reviewed post-flight. We're also requiring cultural sensitivity retraining for all airport personnel. Good, Nia said, but incomplete. She reached into her file and pulled out a stapled document. This is a policy addendum I'm submitting for review. It mandates anonymous passenger incident reporting, requires justification for any last-minute reassignments, and triggers an automatic audit if a first-class seat is downgraded without cause. Gregory scanned the first page. That's strict, he said. It's necessary. Camille interjected. We've been reactive long enough. Gregory sighed. For the first time, his voice carried less assurance. I understand the optics. This is not about optics, Nia interrupted, still calm. This is about pattern and consequence. She closed her notepad. Do you know how many flights I've taken undercover in the past 8 years? Gregory shook his head. 47, and in nearly half, I've witnessed micro-displacements, coded instructions, subtle reroutes, things that don't make headlines but shape lives. Women, elderly passengers, people of color. She paused. I didn't escalate any of those flights. I took notes. I filed reports, quietly, until flight CS-2271 forced the quiet to end. The room fell silent again. Camille turned to Gregory. You'll receive the policy draft by day's end. We expect implementation benchmarks within the quarter. Gregory nodded. Then, surprisingly, he looked back at Nia not with defiance, but with something like fatigue. You didn't raise your voice once, he said softly. No, Nia replied, because power doesn't always need to shout. When the session adjourned, Nia gathered her papers and exited the room without looking back. She stepped into the hallway and stood by the window. The city stretching out before her in cold autumn light. Jordan met her moments later. Media's asking if you're going public, he said. I'm not, Nia said. The story isn't about me. It's about the system. He nodded. So what now? She turned and smiled faintly. Now we finish what we started, then I fly again. Jordan blinked. Already I booked a ticket for next week. Same airline, same route, seat 2A. He raised an eyebrow. You trust them, I trust the audit, and I trust myself. She looked out the window again. They tried to erase me with politeness and procedure. She said, but I wrote myself back in with proof, and with that. She walked down the hall, back into a world that had no idea how many voices had been trained to whisper instead of speak. Until now, the airport looked the same. Same polished floors, same hum of conversations near the security checkpoint. Same scent of overpriced coffee hanging near Gate 17. But this time, the air didn't carry the same weight. Nia Reynolds walked through the terminal in silence, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with presence. Her boarding pass was in her left hand, her briefcase in her right. Her steps were calm, measured. Gate agent Carmela Lee looked up from her tablet when Nia approached. "Good morning," Nia said with a gentle nod. The agent smiled back, recognition flickering in her eyes, though she said nothing. She simply scanned the pass, double-checked the screen, and nodded. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Reynolds," she said. "You're in 2A." Nia thanked her and walked down the jet bridge. It was a different plane, a different crew, but the same route. San Francisco to Atlanta, a new beginning wrapped in a familiar shell. When she stepped into the first-class cabin, the lead flight attendant smiled warmly. "Seat 2A is just here," he gestured, already offering to stow her coat. Nia slid into the wide leather seat. It was clean, cool, quiet. She placed her briefcase under the seat in front and leaned back, letting her eyes close for a brief second. And then came a voice, soft, high-pitched, childlike. "Hi." Nia opened her eyes. A little girl, no more than 9 or 10, was settling into 2B. Brown skin, tightly coiled hair in colorful clips, hands clutching a stuffed giraffe that looked like it had seen hundreds of flights. Nia smiled. "Hi there. I've never sat up here before," the girl said. "Mama says it's like flying in a hotel." Nia chuckled. "It kind of is. My name's Lila," the girl added. "Nia." A woman soon followed, a young mother, flustered but polite. "Sorry, she's very talkative. It's perfectly fine," Nia said. The mother handed over a tablet and some crackers, adjusted Lila's seatbelt, and mouthed a thank you before returning to her seat in economy. Lila looked out the window and sighed. "Mama said we only got this seat because something got mixed up. But I don't mind. I got lucky." Nia looked at her carefully. It wasn't lost on her. Not at all. "Maybe it wasn't luck," she said softly. As the plane taxied, Nia closed her eyes again, but she could feel the energy shifting all around her. The first-class crew was more attentive than usual. Yes, but not out of obligation. It was something else, something closer to awareness. The plane lifted from the runway smoothly. Somewhere below, press releases and policy revisions were still unfolding. Coastal Skies was implementing mandatory bias response training, finalizing Nia's proposed audit trail, and launching a third-party compliance platform. The headlines had slowed, but the work had begun. And yet, in this moment, none of that mattered more than the little girl beside her. "So, what do you do?" Lila asked mid-flight. Nia smiled. "I listen. To what? Sometimes to people. Sometimes to silence." Lila looked puzzled. "Silence doesn't say anything." "Ah," Nia said, "but that's the thing. Silence tells you who's missing, whose voices aren't heard. It tells you who they thought wouldn't speak up." Lila thought about that for a second. Then she nodded, as if filing it away for later. The flight attendant brought them both water with lemon slices. Nia thanked him, then opened her briefcase and took out a small notepad. She wasn't writing anything, just holding it. "Do you like flying?" Lila asked. I didn't, Nia said, but now I do, because it reminds me what still needs to change. Lila tilted her head. I don't get it. That's okay, Nia said. You will. As they flew east, clouds drifted like soft rivers beneath them. The sun caught the wingtip in flashes of gold and glass. Nia took a quiet breath. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about holding a system up to the light, about refusing to disappear quietly, about creating space literal and symbolic for those who might never know why they were denied it in the first place. At one point, during the descent, Lila held her giraffe tighter and looked a little nervous. Ears popping, Nia asked. She nodded. Try yawning or swallowing. Like this. Nia mimicked a big yawn. Lila copied her, giggling. It worked. By the time the wheels touched down in Atlanta, the little girl was beaming. I'm going to tell everyone I sat in first class, Nia smiled. You should. Lila paused, then looked back at her. Will I ever get to do it again? Nia didn't answer right away. Instead, she took her boarding stub, flipped it over, and wrote something in pen. You belong here. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. She handed the card to Lila and whispered, Keep this for later. The girl clutched it like treasure. As the passengers stood to disembark, the flight attendant made a small announcement. On behalf of Coastal Skies, we thank you for flying with us today. We're especially honored to welcome a guest who's helped reshape how we serve every passenger, every seat, every time. Thank you. Ms. Reynolds. There were no claps, no gasps, but the woman in front of Nia turned around and nodded slowly. The man across the aisle gave her a small gesture of respect, and that was enough. She didn't need applause. She only needed change. As she walked off the plane, Lila caught up to her. Miss Nia, yes. The girl looked up at her with shining eyes. Someday, I want to sit in 2A. Nia knelt beside her, looked her in the eye, and said gently, You already have everything you need to get there. And with that, she walked into the jet bridge, not behind, not beneath, not erased, but seen, present, written into the story forever. What began as an ordinary flight ended as a landmark moment in quiet resistance. Nia Reynolds never shouted. She never made a scene. She simply sat, observed, and let the truth speak through documentation, because sometimes dignity whispers louder than outrage. Her act wasn't about revenge, it was about recognition. She didn't reclaim just one seat. She reclaimed the right to belong, for herself and for every person ever told they were in the wrong place. Through her courage, policies were rewritten, voices were amplified, and a little girl in seat 2B now knows she belongs in any space she dares to dream of. But the fight against discrimination isn't over. This story is a reminder racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles at you in uniform. If this story moved you, if you believe that quiet strength can change systems, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel. Your voice, your view, your support helps shine a light where silence once lived. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay brave, stay kind, stay seen,